live from a submarine in the Arctic Ocean, it's the Junies!
Welcome to the Junies, the only award show that isn't biased. And now, the award for Best Animated Web Series goes to Smash World!
Yeah! 2024 was weird. The hubris of the Western game industry has caught up with it, and no company is safe from the resulting AAA crash. Microsoft has done everything to make it look like there won't be another Xbox console. Sony proved to us that they learned absolutely nothing from the PS3 launch, and on top of that, they had not one, but two commercial bombs in just a few months. Hell, Concord came and went so fast it had me imagining a timeline where I actually played it.
What's with these graphics? This looks like a Nintendo 64 game.
And Ubisoft is just straight up on the brink of bankruptcy. Like, no joke, I wouldn't be surprised at all if they're either gone entirely or owned by another company come the end of 2025. The worst part is that all of this means the game devs are getting laid off left and right. Despite all that, there actually were quite a few games released this year, and some of them were even good. There was Princess Peach Showtime, which was a completionist's nightmare, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which had some of the worst pacing I've ever experienced in a video game, though at least this part was funny. They remade Trace Memory and proved that even a predictable mystery can still be engaging. There was that game about European TVs. I think Sonic Blast came out on Game Gear this year, right? Balatro was everyone's favorite card game this year. UFO 50 showed us what it would be like if Action 52 was good. There was Tekken 8, Elden Ring got some DLC, Super Monkey Ball tricked me into thinking it went soft and then threw brutally hard stages at me when my guard was down. Sega released a new console! Yeah, it's a follow-up to the Pico, but just because it's made for preschoolers doesn't mean it's not a console. Yeah, there was a lot this year. But let's talk about the good shit I played. The best of the best! Mario vs. Donkey Kong was a sequel to Donkey Kong 94, until it decided to be Lemmings instead. But then Nintendo said fuck that and remade the first one. They even made some brand new levels for it, and they are a good sign of the future for this series. This kind of game is puzzle platforming at its finest, and that new soundtrack keeps my toes a-tapping. Confession to make. I haven't played Infinite Wealth, but it's because I'm still getting caught up on the Like a Dragon series as of now. I've played 2 games this year, but the one that's going on my list is Yakuza 5. This is by far the longest game in the series up to this point. I was just having a good time when suddenly I realized it took me 131 hours to beat, and is now the second longest game I've ever played. But I don't even care, because I just kinda locked in on this one. There's so much to do. You got Kiryu racing on the highway in a taxi, Saejima fights a bear in this game, you get to play as the world's most pathetic man, and Haruka with the fire extinguisher! Haruka's a playable character, but instead of fighting, she gets into these dance battles, and then Akiyama dance battles with this old lady. This game has everything! Yeah, the story can be hard to follow, and there's like a billion mini-games that heavily increase playtime. Both things I hated in games like FF7 Rebirth, but the Like a Dragon series doesn't feel like it deliberately wastes your time. Hell, these games can actually be pretty short if you're only doing the main story, but the side stuff is so much fun that I don't mind taking my time, and that's the difference. I chose to do it! Guilty Gear Strive! More like I'm striving to be guilty of playing my Game Gear? Just cut that whole thing. I played a lot of fighting games in my time. There's just one problem. I never have anyone to play with who's around my skill level.
By which I mean I'm bad at fighting games.
So yeah, if I'm not getting my shit kicked in by someone online who's leagues above me, I'm getting my shit kicked in by the quarter-munching CPU. But one day I had some friends over and they said to me, hey, we've been playing Guilty Gear Strive lately, and I said, oh, I heard that's pretty good. And then they were like, you should get Guilty Gear Strive, and I said, oh. And then I had trouble even finding a copy, and when I finally found one, it took like 2.5 weeks to ship for some reason, and then I still had to buy a lot of DLC, but finally, the game was ready to play. And then this one kicked my ass with Slayer, this one kicked my ass with Happy Goddamn Chaos, and this one kicked my ass with fucking Bedman! Eventually, I kind of went apeshit when playing as the Yo-Yo Girl and started winning occasionally. And then I played as this lady with the ice powers, and this just kind of started working a little too well for a while.
Stay back. Please. Dangerous force.
I may not even know all the characters' names, but Guilty Gear Strive is the most fun I've had with a fighting game. Sickle Storm! Dr. Robotnik's ring racers can get so fucking fast, so fucking frantic, and when you play online, the ridiculousness shifts into maximum overdrive. The skill ceiling is really high, but I'm having so much fun that I don't even mind coming in last place.
Oh, I biffed it!
This is one of the best racing games I've played in some time. It's such a blast that I can easily look past the fact that the rival AI is a cheating asshole with a bullshit dynamic difficulty curve. And that getting the Chaos Emeralds is fucking impossible. And also that Arl uses her Puyo Fever voice clips for some reason.
Very nice.
Also Vector's mysterious absence. And that fucking 45-minute tutorial. I'm not gonna get into it here because that would just pad the video like a mandatory challenge stage, but outside his debut, I really don't care for Shadow as a character, so I wasn't particularly excited about him getting his own side story in a Sonic Generations remaster, but the audacity to bring back Black Doom of all characters did leave me curious, and to my surprise, we got a really good game. Shadow Generations has some of the best level design in a 3D Sonic game in years. It's complex, has plenty of alternate pathways, and actually manages to be designed in a way where the boost can't act as a crutch for gameplay. Hell, it actually gets kinda tough by the end. Finally, I can play a version of Rail Canyon where rail switching is actually programmed correctly. This game easily goes into my top 5 3D Sonic games, but if it were up to me, I would have called it Sonic Generations and Shadow. Never before has an RPG sold me as early as the prologue. This was whimsical, fun, and left me excited for what I was going to see next. And what we got was a lovely story about self-discovery. So here's the thing. When I played FF7 for the first time, I already knew every major plot element the game had to offer because its reputation was so great that many of its twists were just common knowledge by that point. With FF9, I was able to go in blind with the only things I really knew about being stuff you find out very early on. There are a couple twists in this game I found really cool, and other story aspects that I wholeheartedly adore. That's why I'm being vague on this, and only showing footage from the prologue. I want you to play it blind if you haven't played it already.
And if you have played it already, I want you to erase your memory and play it again.
This game's existence was easily the biggest surprise of the year for me. Emio the Smiling Man is the third game in the Famicom Detective Club series, but it's actually the fourth. It's also the first game that lets you play as Ayumi Tachibana, but it's actually the second. Emio tells a tragic, chilling tale about family and trauma, and while your main objective is obviously to solve the mystery, Emio stands out from other murder mystery stories I've experienced by putting focus on how the incident has affected the people around the victims. Thematically speaking, I would call this the darkest game Nintendo has ever made, partly due to the realistic nature of the story. I can't really say much else about the game without spoiling it, but that ending is something else. Paper Mario The Thousand Year Door is a rather run-of-the-mill remake, all things considered. Well, there are a few new things here and there, and backtracking has been made much faster. It's mostly a graphical upgrade with improved presentation and an arranged soundtrack, but all that just goes to show how good of a game it already was, and that's why it's going on the list. The craziest thing about this year is that I actually played not one but 2 PS5 exclusives, the first being FF7 Rebirth, and the other being Astrobot. This is the first full-fledged game by Team Asobi, the last remaining dev studio of PlayStation Japan, and it was released the same day Concord shut down. As a 3D platformer, Astrobot isn't doing anything original in the slightest, and it definitely took inspiration from Mario Galaxy in a few aspects, but none of that really matters to me because the devs clearly understand what makes a good 3D platformer. It's got cool power-ups like a chicken rocket or sponge mode, there's a lot of hidden goodies, it has challenge levels that'll kick you in the dick, and the tons of PlayStation references are just the icing on the cake, though a few of the third-party ones I raised an eyebrow at. Like, Space Channel 5 is a Dreamcast game. I don't care that the sequel's on PS2, it was also on Dreamcast. And was Ghosts and Goblins ever on PlayStation? Huh, I guess it was. It's been quite a long time since I played a 3D platformer that was this good from a company other than Nintendo, and it's such a nice breath of fresh air to play such a fun game in an era where it feels like Sony and several other game companies have forgotten the concept of fun. Hell yeah! You wouldn't think a game about climbing a 200-floor procedurally generated tower would be very fun, but here it is, at the very top of the list. What more can I say? Alright, so the dungeon crawling is pretty cool, but the real highlight of a Persona game is outside the tower. You can hang out with any of your large sum of friends, which in Reload now includes the guys, and really get invested into the lives of each and every one of them. Yeah, it definitely feels more like a really long interactive movie than a game at times, but you could also make the argument that it knows what it is and doesn't need to pat itself with minigames. Alright. It's hard to describe what makes this game #1 material for me, but when I played this game, I got sucked into it to a degree I haven't experienced with other lengthy games I've played this year, and if that explanation isn't good enough for you, well maybe its soundtrack will make up for that.
The award for Best Award Show goes to the Junies!